Today's video is a guide on making a crypt, provided by a fantastic book called The Barrowmaze, which is easily accessible from Drive-Thru RPG. If you decide to buy the book, make sure you purchase the right one, as there are multiple versions for different TTRPGs. I'm sure some of you already have your ways of creating dungeons and crypts, but I know there's a lot of you guys out there who are still searching for ways to create fun, exciting experiences for your players. This crypt generator is intended to offer some low-hanging fruit for player characters. In my campaigns, I like using these crypts as a part of exploring the region. The party can stumble upon such ruins, and with these crypts being so quick to make, I can have them all over the place. The first step is to roll a d8 and refer to table number 1, the crypt entrance. With your grid paper or map making software, sketch out the entrance that you've rolled. For this tutorial, I'm using Dungeon Scroll, which is a free browser-based software that allows you to create simple and meaningful maps for your players. I've used a lot of different map making softwares over the years, and I cannot deny that this does take the cake. I do like more in-depth softwares, but I find myself wasting hours of my time trying to shade and add little bits of detail when I could have actually spent that time, I don't know, making the dungeon more interesting and designing magical items, custom spells, and unique monster abilities. Remember guys, smart prep. Once we design the entrance, the second step is to roll a d4. The result is the amount of additional rooms the crypt will have. I typically follow this, but actually I've made crypts that have had 2d4 rooms in the past for like a larger side quest. It's really up to you to try things out and just see what works for you. Step 3 is to roll for what each of the additional chambers looks like. It's another d8, refer to table 2. Pretty straightforward. I typically have these chambers spaced out slightly, unless it's my intention to have a tight, very compact catacomb. This allows me to play around with corridors and potentially add more traps and puzzles if I feel like the crypt at the end of this process doesn't have enough going on. In the module this system is provided with, it notes that all crypt entrances are sealed with large cover stones. A big sledgehammer and an iron spike is required to break them open. It takes roughly 20 minutes to open with a strong character, and it requires one random monster check. I have also in the past had the dungeon entrance covered in rubble or dirt, so the party had to like dig it clear with shovels. You can come up with whatever obstacle you guys want. It's your game after all. You need to next determine the type of door for each additional room. A d6 will determine it. They can be stone, wooden but reinforced with iron, bronze, or an archway with a portcullis. There is a 30% chance that a 10-foot descending staircase immediately extends beyond the door. Once you've got the type of door, we need to roll a d6 for each to determine whether it's locked, sealed, closed, or ajar. As you can see, we've already done quite a lot. Now we need to determine the entrance feature by rolling a d12. We refer to the table that's on the screen now and implement that into our write-up for the dungeon. Usually I just add this information on the actual map that I'm working on currently, but if I have an asset for it, I'll likely add it to the map as well, so it's not just an empty room for my players. As these battle dungeon maps are actually explored by my players with dynamic lighting on a virtual tabletop. I really like the variety of options for this. There's a statue of an evil god that might be in your campaign, a throne that was once used by a lord or king, pillars encrusted with gemstones worth a sizable purse, as well as potentially secret doors and sarcophagi that could contain monstrous remains. Now is the fun part for me, if that wasn't already fun enough. For each room, including the entrance, we actually roll to determine the contents. It's a d12, like before, and the results vary from being an empty, boring room to having traps, monsters, treasure, or even another unique feature from from the d12 we previously rolled. Sometimes I roll, sometimes I pick. It really depends on what I'm going for. It's usually more fun to roll, but sometimes you roll empty rooms multiple times, and that wouldn't be particularly fun for my players. I've had some cool combinations before, like a poison gas trap in a room with skeletons who are, you know, immune to poison. You can really mix and match the potential and come up with your own ideas too. Remember that this book is a resource and shouldn't always be followed like gospel. Sometimes going against the guidelines can be more fun. This book includes a fantastic list of monsters that your crypt could include. And whilst you can use this, I'd actually recommend creating a D6 or a D8 table instead with monsters you'd like to use for your crypts and dungeons. That is because perhaps not all of these options are things that you would want to use, or because I'm not going to actually show all the monster stats that are on this list. You might not actually have access to this stuff unless you buy the book. If you do want to use this table and you have the book, just roll a d20 and refer to the table which is appropriate for the level of your group. Rolling a nat 20 on this table is hilarious, and I've had my players face off against some really gnarly shit before. If you're playing above level 10, well, honestly, I need to question your sanity for playing high level D&D. But you wouldn't be able to use this table, so refer to what I said previously and you know, make your own little table. Quite frankly, this module is created with low-level characters in mind. Aren't you supposed to be, you know, fighting gods and demons now at a higher level? I don't think crypts and catacombs are particularly appropriate for level 15 adventurers, but that's just me. If you roll for any grave goods, we can determine that now. For each room with grave goods, roll a d20. Here's the table. It's pretty straightforward. I love the idea of finding things like ancient scrolls that might include information on unique monsters, maps that uncover the catacombs of a powerful king, unique spell scrolls, or maybe even star charts made by an ancient civilization. This system for making crypts, whilst it may have more steps than some of the more traditional systems, it allows you to go into what I think is the right amount of detail to prepare content for your players. We do also need to determine the value of the goods that you've rolled, which is a d12. They do also have some additional rules for special goods, but I'm not going to include that in this video. You'd have to own the book in order to be able to sort through that. What about traps? Well, if you've got some traps, you'll need to roll a d6. Here's the table. I love how simple and clean this table is. It offers 6 different options, a few of which I've rarely used prior to following this system. I can really count on one hand the amount of times I've used gas or magical traps in my campaigns, which doesn't really speak too highly of my dungeon mastering skills. But for each of these trap types, there's a sub-table which is a d4, which you get to roll on. Some of these traps are pretty fucking rough, and it really speaks to the brutality of these more OSR styled games, when this module is definitely old school. I personally fucking love them. But if you're prepping with a side of caution, you can obviously nerf the traps ever so slightly. Just make sure you tuck your players into bed tonight and give them a kiss on the head because they can't handle the big leagues. I'm only joking. Kinda. With that in mind, that's really it. I know it felt like it took a lot of time to do this, but you've fully designed and fleshed out a crypt catacomb for your campaigns, and it didn't even take 10 minutes. You can use this straight away, and you don't really need to improvise an awful lot. I really hope this helps you guys in the never-ending journey of being a dungeon master. See you guys next time on Loki's Lair. Peace.